12th December 1963, they said, the country's new flag became momentarily stuck as it was being run up the pole. Earlier that morning, the Union Jack had been brought down for the last time at a large midnight ceremony attended by tens of thousands at Uhuru Gardens in Nairobi. There was wild cheering, celebration with singing and dancing as freedom was ushered with pomp and 1,000 fireworks that lit up the night sky and the beaming faces of the gathered throng of people from all stations of life. Across the country later that day, festivities heralded the birth of a new nation in the capital city of Nairobi, where the formalities of the transfer of power were taking place. The spotlight rested atop the flag post, awaiting the bold fluttering of the new flag. But that didn't happen. For a fleeting moment, due to a technical hitch, the halfway hoisted flag could not be released to flutter in the cool Independence morning breeze and crisp sunny blue skies. And it was at this precise moment, according to legend, that Prince Philip, who was attending the event representing the Queen, turned to Prime Minister Jomo Kenyatta and whispered, cheekily, "It's not too late to change your mind. Maybe there's a symbol, there's a sign from the gods that maybe we were meant to be here to stay." But even this slight embarrassing moment could not dampen the mood at the venue around millions of hearts around the country, where there was unbridled hope as Kenya was poised at the starting line of a beckoning bright future as an independent country. And ultimately, the flag was flown proudly at the official venue and simultaneously high atop Mount Kenya, the highest point of the country's landscape. To even more pomp, fireworks muffled by thunderous cheering as if from one throat. Many hearts were gladdened and they brimmed with joy. And of course, as we know as Kenyans, no one celebrates harder than we do. Kenyans excel in celebration and celebrating. Besides, of course, our world record-shattering long-distance racing reputation. No opportunity, therefore, was left unexploited for joyous partying. And as one can imagine, independence celebrations and ceremonies were held almost without respite throughout Independence Week. Indeed, the period of the most intensive pageantry and pomp did not only last between 11th and 14th of December 1963. Actually, the celebratory mode had started many months earlier when the country gained internal self-rule and government, or Madaraka, on 1st June 1963. But an even greater step was when Kenya became a republic, Jamhuri, 1 year later on 12th December 1964. And hence, this was the ultimate culmination that drove the cyclic celebration into the final frenzied and euphoric high gear. In a broadcast to the nation on the eve of Jamhuri Day, Jomo Kenyatta told Kenyans, who actually needed no reminding, to greet the exact moment marking the new dawn, the stroke of midnight, with festivity and rejoicing. In this address, he reiterated that becoming a republic was a significant milestone on the road to independence. It meant, quote unquote, absolute freedom of Africans running their own government, parliament, making all decisions affecting the country's security and progress. It also meant sovereignty, and I quote, not only in fact, but also in appearance. The unique and historic decision of the main opposition party, KADU, to join the government, he said, bode well for building, and I quote again, one strong Kenyan nation for the benefit of all, with leeway still for constructive self-criticism among ourselves, end of quote. Kenyatta went on to promise that he and his ministers were, and I quote, guided by a single inspiration to raise the standards of living of the people. His government's single task was, and I quote once again, to attack fiercely, end of quote, as it could the enemies of malnutrition, sickness, illiteracy, economic frustration. Such was the exuberant commitment with which to thrust open the gateways of hope, always looking out toward new frontiers of economic and social opportunities for every man, woman, and child. As in his numerous rhetoric-ridden speeches made out throughout 1964, the president told Kenyans that the government could not, however, be expected to fulfill this commitment alone. The people's understanding and contribution was needed. These calls did not go unheeded. It is a hearkening and an eager people who had earlier that year responded to the triumphant call of Harambee to pull resources together to drive the country forward in a spirit promoting self-reliance. Uhuru na kazi, freedom and work, was the slogan and omnibus rallying cry toward this goal. This slogan was a subtle recalibration of the much more popular Mau independence struggle slogan and expectation, Idhakanawe Yadhi, the restitution of Africans' lost land with and for freedom or self-mastery. So, rather than promising restorative justice with regard to land, Uhuru na kazi pointed to the rewards of hard work that was expected to be greater and more accessible with independence. Therefore, there was not to be restitution of people's lands. Although I must mention, of course, there was a semblance of it. For example, the million-acre scheme and numerous others. But the people were told no free land was to be expected. Uhuru na kazi was to be the guiding spirit expected to imbue everyone from the grassroots all the way up. These would be buttressed by individual and collective discipline with thoughts of duty and morality. Somehow, these other things would follow later. Nonetheless, it was hoped that it would be one, ensuring and enshrining national dignity, freedom, and greater human respect founded on the belief in individual human rights. A state that provided for a kind of human respect that extended beyond what a man was or what he did to what he owned and cherished. These very sentiments were echoed in Kenyatta's Jamhuri Day address when he was actually inaugurated as the country's first president. Kenyatta, the founding father of the nation, hailed and heralded the birth of a new Kenyan state. And in this speech, this Jamhuri speech, Kenyatta dug deep within the deepest recesses of his soul to deliver his most important address to the nation until that moment. This speech was not disappointing in the least. I myself was rather impressed by it. And people, his heeding children, really were aroused by it. It was a rousing speech. There was a palpable sense that he cared deeply that all, with him at the helm, worked together to forge a stable, strong, and united African state. He led the people in imagining a Kenyan state in which all participated in government, commerce, industry, and the proper usage of land. Having done so, however, Kenyatta went on to aptly caution that this image in our minds, as he called it, was not enough. It was but a design, and dreams were no refuge. Instead, there was need for the vigor of practical initiative to turn this image of a new Kenyan nation into reality. The guiding light of the enlightenment, service, and dignity that had quelled divisive forces of colonial racialism and bigotry had to be sustained. Freedom and unity were to be the pillars of the state. The state was all the people of Kenya. There were no longer Kikuyu, Kamba, Giriama, Kipsigis, Maasai, or even the British people who chose to stay, Asian or Somali, and so on and so forth. After all, the state embodied equality, promised equality and respect. It cut through social and ethnic distinctions. A crucial moment in time had arrived when all were able to achieve their individual and group goals and therefore command their own destiny and rediscover their own voice. These words, full of candor, the president's speech, were the soft pouring rain on parched, dry land that had not tasted water for years. They were well weighted, well meant, and they welled from the deep. But then, speech was just words, unfortunately. During these heady days, however, the smell of freedom was in the air. African agency was affirmed and on the road to being restored. Weak, marginalized voices literally rang out. Caught up in the contagious euphoria, everything was collectively achievable. People at all levels of life were imbued by an all-consuming optimism. There was absolute certainty that acting together, they could make things happen. They were not just full of bringing hope, but also unthwarted commitment. Teachers, doctors, nurses, lawyers, architects, engineers, writers, and many others in various vocations were going to serve the nation. And this they did with great and uncurbed enthusiasm. With the simple act of lowering the Union Jack and hoisting of a new flag, British colonialism had ended, and all its ills and efforts were quote-unquote over. In the place of the indignities, humiliation, and oppression of colonialism, everyone was once again bound together in the restored social fabric underlined by mutual reciprocity and well-being, all committed to each other in the African spirit of mutual concern and respect, underscored by the notion of the binding African philosophy of life, which we can all identify with, that says, I am because we are, and since we are, therefore I am. Everyone was once brothers or sisters keeper, right from the president reaching down to the grassroots and back again. This was a key aspiration of the Mau Mau struggle. Indeed, the armed freedom struggle had occasioned a severe food shortage during the time it lasted in the 50s. These had led to the composition of a Mau Mau song that urged and charged people to split the little food that there was, even if it was a single morsel of a bean, in a spirit of sharing. Indeed, this spirit of sharing was encapsulated in the spirit of sharing of Harambee that attempted, Harambee tapped into this spirit. And for a while, the president inspired and ably led Harambee development projects in which all communities pooled their efforts, skills, and financial resources in order to build bridges, schools, sponsor and send bright students to national schools, and I bet some of you might be products of Harambee, build public universities, send students abroad for studies, bridges, build hospitals, roads, cattle dips, water projects, and so on and so forth. People sought to ensure individual as well as collective survival and growth. It was a historic and successful moment in which human rights took the center front, inspired by this collective vision and fanned by a spirit of accountability between the individual and the group. But this was a political honeymoon. And like all political honeymoons, it proved to be short-lived. The music suddenly stopped. Too soon, stopped, and doubt rose and lingered. And there was this question in some people's minds. Had people witnessed the birth of a nation, or was it just a vivid dream of a birth. Even worse, was it a birth of a nation or its death? No doubt Kenyans had expected there to be a death. The death of the old British colonial order, right? A death of the colonial policy and legal architecture of systematized violence that had dramatically altered their lives. And with these deaths, people hoped to witness a rebirth of a new nation, but trashed by restorative justice and the righting of colonial ills. Most people were most definitely convinced of there having been a birth. There was enough evidence of that, and no doubt, self-rule, independence, jamhuri, and the people's president and father. And the most symbolic of all evidence was the lowering of the Union Jack that was now replaced by the flattering splendor of the country's new flag. All these were symbols that bore witness to the fact that indeed there was a birth. Besides, the birth of a nation was akin to the germination of a grain of wheat. A grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, after which it bears much fruit, heralding mature, complete transformation. But it seems for some Kenyans, like T.S. Eliot, the poet Magi, in his poem, The Journey of the Magi, had witnessed a congruous birth and death. Yet they, like Eliot's Magi, thought and had expected the two birth and death to be different. Different but complementary processes paving the way to a new and rejuvenated life. Instead, Kenyans found and still find themselves simply caught up between two worlds, and for that reason could not and cannot decide whether they were led all the way down independence road to witness and experience a birth or a death. Having reached the road then and entered the canon of political promise, weary but hopeful ordinary Kenyans experienced alienation right on the heels of its Independence Day exhilaration. Yet there was nothing they could do about it. They actively felt their powerlessness in a world that had only changed. Their hard-won and long journey, occasioned by the pain of loss and sacrifice, did not bring about the joy of the fulfillment of their dreams, but rather led them to the deepest perplexity and inconsolable outrage, arguably no much different from the first dawn of the violent imperial conquest and occupation. They were high-strung, caught up as they were, midway between a birth and a death. Therefore, for some critical public, the birth of the nation was a hard and bitter agony for them, like a death. Therefore, at any rate, the hallmarks of the colonial era, including human immiseration, alienation, the devaluation of human life, and work was still evident. Thus, many continue to be pushed to the outer limits of bare life, not to mention bare death. Independence and its accompanying rosy, brave new world that initially heralded actually turned out to be only a game of musical chairs. It was a most embittering past for most people. It did not take much or long for people to realize and appropriately recognize what this transition was all about. Mere or literal flag independence. Kenyatta had even gone as far as honoring, quote unquote, honoring a few Mau fighters with national flags. But then, that is all they received for all their efforts, pain, and sacrifices. They felt betrayed. In a powerful analogy, they complained that these were triumphant but unrewarded soccer players. As discussed in my book, and specifically specified, those who fought the colonial order had re-entered society only to find that they were still landed in a rural world now realigned by land consolidation and free hold titles. Despite having played and won the game, the trophy is
been rewarded or awarded to the spectator. Even more disheartening for these people, some people within government wanted these symbolic gifts for the national flag given to a few freedom fighters in Ghana. And those of you who perhaps hear from Mary will probably identify with that story. Of Southern Mary politicians actually asking for the flag. I won't mention the name. So here is an example of the story. But yes, people wanted this flag back. These actions led a few among the awardees to complain directly to the president in a letter that, quote, our dear leader, whoever told children to ignore Prime Minister Aina, ordering them not to run to the Philippines. Our beloved leader, you honor us with a flag so that it could be a trophy to be fought over between the masses and the Joheda, the educated elite, and of course. But besides such embarrassing, shameful, and petty political squabbles, independence really did not adequately address or fix the criminal based legal policy foundation of the edifice that is the post-colonial state. The historical and structural injustice, especially with regard to the sensitive issue of land, was addressed on the basis of the principle of, and quote, willing buyer and willing seller. These bore justice as a guest only for white settlers, most of whom were compensated for their more recent loss of land. The older, more genuine African loss of land somehow conveniently forgotten, saying that Africans who expected the restoration of their ancestral land, saying that Africans who expected the restoration of their ancestral land was a state would be an destination of their independent flight. I mean, these people's lives were shattered. Needless to say, the litmus test for independence was the practical enjoyment and the fruit of independence, of which the president talked about: land restoration and land redistribution, dignity, freedom from ignorance, poverty, disease, malnutrition, and economic frustration, and greater human respect founded on the belief in individual human rights. As Kenyatta had said, their aim of these ends was the path to an improved standard of living for all. Thus, any obstacle in the way was to be attacked fiercely. And there were, if I may say, certainly, and they have been tackled by different regimes over the years, but only with greater success. On the contrary, and rather unfortunately, I want to suggest to you that what has been only fiercely but faithfully and consistently attacked since independence, without any shadow of a doubt or uncertainty, are state borders and public commons such as game parks, wildlife positions, elephants, rhinos, lions, both public and private, and forests. And I bet you will bear witness to that. And rather coincidentally, these activities have featured quite prominently the small class of the political elite and their cronies. The process has involved a great deal of unthinking and unhinged, yet focused and determined greed. If not very shocking to read. And this is true of all the four different regimes after independence. Long forgotten is the sense of individual and collective discipline and sort of duty and morality of which Kenyatta spoke in such under his distinguished committee adjourned independence. Mutual reciprocity, collective destiny relationship, full participation in government, commerce, industry, in the sense of surveying, have increasingly been deployed in the pinnable function of a widely shared and highly prioritized explored and exclusive squeeze out of the wealthy. Kenya's independence music and celebration seems to be no source for a few select people, the people at the top. The dancing and celebrations that accompany independence continues to be enjoyed by those at the top of the wealth pyramid. It is these groups that hijack the fruits of independence at the expense of the greater majority of civil society. Land, employment, the best education and healthcare, civil liberties, civic responsibility begin to suffer like the flag at independence. The only difference between the flag and the fruit of independence being that the fruits of independence are not somewhere trapped in the middle. Right? It's not a middle class who are having all the fun and dancing. The fruits of independence are stuck at the top. To be sure, this was not by ill design, but as a result of sheer elite greed. And this is a state quite during and after over 50 years of independence. And this is clear and punishment. The state belongs to a group of people who control its resources. No wonder one of our colorful politicians said, no to say, with chama kinaonyesha, ama nchi inaonyesha. The image and dream of a state for all that inspired political protests and sacrifices before and during Mau has, it seems, been effectively frustrated since independence. It has, regrettably, been replaced by the rather pervasive attitude of, quote, each his own. But then, this is perfectly understandable, since it is based on a weak and an unjust system, a massive black shark infested liquid mass of dynastic fiscal networks now by corruption with poison headwaters being the criminal foundations of the state. It is these criminal foundations of the state that need to be uprooted, rebuilt, and righted if, and here I quote, Nyata, absolute freedom for all elements of malnutrition, sickness, illiteracy, and disease. The new constitutional dispensation offers a glimmer of hope with regard to the promotion of social justice and the preservation of the dignity of individuals and communities, coupled with the realization of the full potential of Kenya. However, as my study has successfully demonstrated, the most glaring historical injustice, the unresolved issue of land politics and national land policy, is fundamental to these constitutional dispensations and order, and by extension, the nature and character of the Kenyan state. The saving grace of things as they are right now is that one of the fundamental and consistent themes of the country's constitution is justice. This comes as no surprise because in the process of making this constitution, for the better part of the past decade of the 20th century, the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission, CKRC, heard from thousands and potentially millions of people many stories of injustice dating back to a century and a half. These are individual and communal narratives involving land theft and that of other property, communal violence, politically motivated killings, displacement of people, torture, discrimination against and exclusion of minorities, and a perverted political and legal system under which impunity flourishes has flourished. Such micro-narratives have been at the core of this study and constitute what I call mortality of struggle. This spirit of political dissent has expressed socioeconomic grievances and needs in a right language that calls for redress of historical injustices and access to resources and basic human rights. Although the soundscape of its multiple voices seems less concerned with and or shows little comprehension of the larger, more or less visible and invisible systemic forces. The claims made engage and call for the freedom of the structure and institutions that perpetuate human suffering. It is therefore imperative that the illegality of colonial legality, the criminal foundation of the Kenyan state, is remedied. In talking to the CKRC, people across the nation expressed the desire to have a constitution to redress the past, and continuing injustices. These underscore the fact that Kenya inherited a colonial legacy that created differentiation and conflict of interest among its people as a matter of policy. It is a legacy that led to the uneven development of regions and communities. Moreover, the post-colonial Kenyan state is still heavily reliant upon the instrument of coercion. And we are standing not very far from the theater of the demonstration of this coercion. These comes, with funny looking water, tear gas money, and threatened tear gas stars. What I'm saying is that this underscores the fact that Kenya inherited a legacy, a colonial legacy, that created differentiation and conflict of interest among people as a matter of policy. And these continue bringing all these cycles of violence, right? And it is therefore a state that still does not recognize the intrinsic worth of the individual. Indeed, individuals may be intrinsic of the state and the privilege to control its apparatus. Yet the opposite, the state existing, and being seen to exist for individuals is the desired idea. This deplorable situation persists because even after the country's independence, in 1963 and 3, the colonial surveillance state was not transformed in essence. The changes were made upon it were only the position. It continued to dominate